Hi, my name is Jake Thompson, and in this video I'm going to talk about the different job roles in the games industry and what tasks those roles involve. First of all, the designer. The designer is responsible for all of the core elements of a game, what it consists of and how it plays. Sometimes they are the ones who come up with the original idea for the game. However, more often than not, the main premise of the game is already defined, and the designer is tasked with creating the best game using this premise, whilst taking into account budget and timescale. After planning elements of a game, such as story, setting, characters, props, etc., the designer must communicate this information to other branches of the development team to create the art assets and computer code that allow the game to be played. During development, adjustments may need to be made to the original specification of the game. This could be to incorporate new programming methods or to react to technical constraints. The scriptwriter is responsible for the story and dialogue of the game. The designer gives the scriptwriter the general premise of the story, and the scriptwriter must use this to create a fleshed out story including character dialogue, cutscenes and gestures, etc.
What's our plan?
Our plan? You're not an apprentice anymore, boy. So study your surroundings. Devise your own plan.
Artists create the visual elements of a game. They will receive information from the designer, such as what the basic look of the game will be. The artist will then create the concept art of different elements of the game, such as characters, environments and objects within the game. It is then down to the 3D modelers to build these elements using a computer. A 2D or texture artist will then create and apply textures to the 3D models. Level designers design the interactivity of the architecture, landscapes and objects of a game. They use character and story elements defined by the designer to produce the layout, look, missions and interactive elements of a level. They are also responsible for the gameplay, including challenges and obstacles put before the character and how they should be overcome. Ideas are first sketched in 2D either on paper or using 2D drawing software. They are then produced in 3D and tested using the game engine. While consulting with the artists and programmers of the game, the level designer produces a detailed inventory of assets, which is comprised of all the objects and programming requirements that are needed to ensure the game runs. The level designer should be aware of the technical limitations of the production and take this into account when designing a level. 3D modelers create 3D models of characters, objects and levels within the game using 3D modeling software. These models will be based on concept art created by the artists. When building a model, the modeler needs to ensure that it can be manipulated by the animator to perform any movements required. The model should also be created within the technical limitations of the game's production. Animators are responsible for the movement and behaviour of objects and characters in a game. This helps give life to the characters, creatures and world. Characters in the game need to be animated to make them seem alive. Objects, scenery, vegetation and environmental effects can have animation effects applied to them to make the game world more believable. Animators use special software packages to create the animations. These can be used for automated or in-game behaviours, as well as cutscenes and predefined sequences. Movements and behaviours must be portrayed efficiently and effectively, making the best use of the game engine's technology, but remaining within the limitations of the platform. Often the number of keyframes used or the number of characters appearing on screen at once is restricted due to these limitations. Animators work alongside programmers and artists to create the optimum balance between seamless movement and high-quality performance on the target platform. Animators work as part of the art department team of the game's production, as they use the models created by the 3D artists. The animators use animation tools provided by the software package used to create the 3D models. This is to create the movements and behaviours of each model, especially characters. Usually an animator will create libraries of reusable animations for each character, as animations can often be a complex combination of many different movements. They are also usually responsible for the rigging and skinning of characters. This involves creating an underlying skeletal structure to aid the animation process. Programmers design and write the computer code that runs and controls the game. As well as creating custom code, they will adjust and use ready-made code libraries. They also test the code and fix any bugs, and develop customized tools for other members of the development team to use. There are different requirements in programming depending on the platform, for example games consoles, PCs, handheld games and mobile games. As well as this, there are specialist programming fields such as physics programming, 3D engine development, AI, interface and control systems. Sometimes large teams of programmers may be needed when creating a game. Some may be in leadership roles, whilst others may be working solely on a specific aspect of the game's programming. Programmers are employed by both publisher-owned and independent development studios. They can also work for middleware producers. This is an increasingly important sector which provides cross-platform graphics rendering, game physics, sound management, AI and other specialist tools. Localization companies may employ programmers. These companies translate and reversion games for different territories. The lead programmer will translate the design into a technical specification for the game and then give tasks to the rest of the programming team. General programmers work on a wide range of tasks. They will often work with code written by other programmers. Some programmers have specific tasks, such as the physics of a game. A specialist tools programmer will design any custom tools needed by other members of the development team. Programmers are needed to create different builds for a game, working with quality assurance testers to fix bugs and localization managers to create different versions of a game for different platforms and territories. The audio engineer creates a soundtrack for a game. This could include music, sound effects, character voices, spoken instructions and ambient effects. Audio engineers work for development studios, so the size of the audio department can differ from company to company. Sometimes it may just be one or two people who may be required to work long hours. Like programmers, audio engineers can work for localization services when reversioning games for different territories. The audio engineer will have to produce a sound design for the game based on a creative brief. When a design is agreed on, the audio engineer will produce it, usually through composing, scoring and recording the music. He may also be responsible for auditioning and recording any actors for the game. This may have to be done in multiple languages if the game is being reversioned. This could also involve lip syncing to animation. Audio engineers are also responsible for sourcing, editing and improving any sound effects for use in the game. The music and sound is then edited, mixed and mastered to produce the soundtrack for the finished game. Due to the non-linear aspects of most games and the interactive elements of them, an audio engineer has to keep in mind how the sound can be manipulated to fit the events happening in the game. There are also various technical constraints to take into consideration. An external producer works externally from the development team and is responsible for ensuring the successful delivery of a game. They are almost always employed by a game publisher and work from the publisher's head office. From here they work with the publisher's sales and marketing departments as well as the game developer. Working closely with the external producer is the internal producer, who is part of the on-site development team. The internal producer is responsible for the staff management to ensure the game is finished on time and on budget. The external producer, on the other hand, acts as a consultant, advising the game developer. They must ensure the publisher has all the information they need to make the game as commercially successful as possible. This can consist of deciding the release of advertisements, screenshots and demos alongside the game's marketing manager. They may also manage the outsourcing of audio, cutscenes and language localization in collaboration with the internal producer. Finally, the external producer acts as a go-between between the developer and publisher regarding interim payments or any major design changes to the game. Quality assurance testers test, tune, debug and suggest refinements to help ensure the quality of a finished game. They systematically playtest a game, analysing its performance against the intentions of the designer, identifying problems and then suggesting ways to improve it. They test the software for bugs, whether it be minor glitches or major crashes. The role of a QA tester requires discipline. They are responsible for finding any faults or flaws in a game before it's released to ensure a high-quality final product. Program bugs, spelling mistakes, localization issues, graphical or audio problems, and also copyright issues should be found and corrected before the game is released. Prioritizing is very important as they work to set deadlines. Therefore, QA testers must know which issues are the most important. A software quality management system is usually used to document findings. They will often have to work in teams, especially when testing a multiplayer game, or each team may each test a certain part of a game. Testers will have to play a game many times to ensure they find as many issues as possible, often using unfinished versions of the game. They should also be able to anticipate different ways that the game may be played and test according to each play style. Once the game is launched, the QA testers maintain an ongoing relationship with customer support teams. Localization technicians ensure games work correctly on different platforms and are accurate in different territories. They must test software to the required timescale across all current gaming platforms. If they find any bugs or other issues, they should be entered into a database in a clear, concise manner, as well as providing solutions where required. They also have to proofread text if translated from English to another language, so it is essential to be able to speak more than one language. Localization technicians must ensure that as few bugs or issues remain in the finished game as possible. There are many different levels of responsibility during a game's development. Members of each department of the development team, for example artists and programmers, will be instructed by their respective team leader, for example lead artist and lead programmer. A manager manages what information is sent where throughout production, and then the manager reports to the producer, who manages finances and budget for the game. Different roles will require you to work different hours. Office hours are the hours during which business is normally conducted. Any additional hours worked are irregular hours. Hot seating means you are not working in a fixed position and you can move between departments if needed. Freelancers are hired on a short contract to perform a specific role during the production of a game. A fixed-term contract means you will work for a set amount of time with set pay, and full-time staff will work a minimum of 40 hours a week and will be paid for any overtime.